Information, consciousness, reality. We all know what these words mean, but do we really? It turns out that even scientists and philosophers have a hard time defining them. Let's start with information, namely the philosophy of information. This book opens with the following question: what is information? And answers, this is the hardest and most central problem in the philosophy of information. Yeah, well, that doesn't really help. Wikipedia has a more pragmatic introduction. Information is any entity or form that provides the answer to a question of some kind. Basically, information is the driver of any type of interaction. As an example, when an observer and an observed entity emerge, information arises. In a nutshell, information allows us to interrogate reality. Its essence is a bit, a 0 or 1, a single yes or no answer. But the most important thing about information was only discovered quite recently, namely that information is tangible, information is physical. To illustrate, last year, for the first time, scientists were able to transform information into work. In other words, energy could be extracted from pure information. Okay, what does the word consciousness mean? Oxford University Press has a book series called A Very Short Introduction. There exist over 600 books in which experts explain a certain concept. The psychologist Susan Blackmore did this for consciousness. On page 1 we can read, what is consciousness? This may sound like a simple question, but it is not. Indeed, the whole notion of consciousness is still controversial in science and philosophy to this day. This is really weird, because the only thing we know that exists with certainty is our own consciousness. Well, at least I know mine does. Okay, let's leave it at that. What about reality? Well, believe me that after studying physics, you actually have more questions than answers regarding the structure of reality. A lot more questions. Basically, ever since we stumbled upon the quantum world over 100 years ago, things have been weird. Space, time, matter, they make no sense under closer investigation. So, what's the problem? After centuries of describing reality with mathematics, we have hit a roadblock in understanding. We are still baffled by questions like, why is there something rather than nothing? Why do we see self-organized complexity all around us and in us? Why can we decode reality with mathematics in the first place? And why are the values of the fundamental constants of the universe what they are? Change them just a little bit and no complex structures can exist, like organic life. And most frighteningly, how do I know that I'm not dreaming or hallucinating in this very moment? The heart of the problem is the following. We are currently stuck in a paradigm. Over 300 years ago, the human mind discovered the machine code of reality, mathematics. This understanding is the reason why we have smartphones in our pockets and rovers on Mars. Mathematics, a figment of the human mind, allows us to engineer reality. This was really great. However, we took a wrong turn at some point. Naively, we assumed that fundamentally the universe must be made up of stuff, little building blocks of matter. This idea, of course, seemed reasonable, and as a result, the materialistic scientific paradigm was born. However, as we now know, this worldview has a very hard time explaining the fundamental nature of reality and consciousness. Luckily, there's a glimmer on the horizon, namely, you guessed it, information. We are currently witnessing the emergence of a new information theoretic paradigm. Slowly, more and more hints of this paradigm shift are appearing. It's becoming visible in certain areas of theoretical physics. Historically, it all began with black hole thermodynamics. This happened in 1974 when Stephen Hawking discovered that black holes emit radiation. Another piece of the puzzle comes from a very specific aspect of string theory, abbreviated as ADS-CFT. People have actually argued that this is in fact the only useful thing to come out of string theory in over 40 years. Basically, ADS-CFT is a mathematical correspondence between a higher dimensional space-time reality and a lower one. This insight is the reason physicists speculate our entire universe could literally be a vast hologram. In other words, what appears to be three-dimensional is in reality an illusion and the result of information encoded on a two-dimensional boundary. Anyway, moving on. We also have theoretical computer science joining the game. Scott Aaronson is a researcher in the field of quantum information theory. He is working with string theorists on the computational aspects of reality. For Aaronson, this interplay of physics and computer science is currently, I quote, one of the most exciting scientific dramas of our time. So why is this revolution happening now? Well, interestingly, the main ideas were already in place by the 1960s or even earlier. The reasons for this delayed adoption are only two human. First, many computer scientists see the study of speculative models of computation as at best a diversion from more serious work. And second, many physicists see computational complexity as about as relevant to the mysteries of nature as dentistry or tax law. Okay, moving on again. Finally, a certain theory from neuroscience called integrated information theory could be relevant as well. As the name suggests, consciousness is thought to be related to how information is embodied in a system. No one knows if it is correct, but it is the first attempt at formalizing consciousness, at expressing it mathematically in the language of information. A handful of neuroscientists, cognitive scientists, and philosophers are researching this speculative idea. Remarkably, at the nexus of all these disciplines, we find pure information. The questions, what is reality and what is consciousness, now have very unexpected additions to the catalogue of usual speculations. Okay, spoiler alert. The only thing that exists is information. Information has an inner and an outer aspect. The inner one gives rise to consciousness. The mind awakens. The outer aspect creates physical reality. The universe is a vast computational structure. But most radically, in this new scientific paradigm, the inner world and the outer world are intimately related. Consciousness could be a fundamental aspect of reality, just like space, time, and matter. Perhaps this is what quantum physics was trying to tell us all along. The take-home message is the following. Reality is woven out of the fabric of information. How? Well, in a nutshell, information tells reality how to compute itself. And information tells consciousness how it feels to be something. As a consequence, objective reality and subjective consciousness are two sides of the same information theoretic coin. Perhaps now, with this new understanding of the universe, age-old questions of existence can finally be answered. If you're intrigued by these ideas, or think it's the stupidest thing you've heard in a while, well, details can be found here. Let me leave you with a quote from Albert Einstein. What I see in nature is a magnificent structure that we can comprehend only very imperfectly, and that must fill a thinking person with a feeling of humility. Thank you.